All right. Hello and welcome to this special edition of Stopping Socialism TV, where we're going to be talking about Bernie Sanders and his potential run for president in 2024. We're going to get to that, but before I do, I just want to put that call out there that I do at the beginning of all these videos to all of our listeners and watchers here to help us out by just doing a couple of things. Won't cost you a penny, only cost you a couple of seconds, and that's hit that like button, share this content, subscribe if you haven't already, even leaving a comment underneath this video. All of these things help break through the big tech algorithm that prevents content like this from being shown to more people. So, joining me today, I'm Donald Kendall, as always. I've got Chris Talgo, who's the editorial director here at the Heartland Institute, and also the author of this piece that we're going to be talking about, which is featured on stoppingsocialism.com, titled, Yep, Bernie Sanders is considering a 2024 presidential run. So, Chris, I thought probably like most people that when Bernie Sanders' campaign collapsed in the last two different primaries, that was going to be the last that we saw of him throwing his hat into the presidential ring. You're telling me that that's not the case and that he might be considering 2024. Explain yourself.
Telling you that you thought wrong, because if you thought that Bernie was going to go out after losing to the Democratic primary twice, nope, he's going to try a third time. So yeah, obviously in 2016, 2020, Bernie, lost the Democratic primary to Hillary Clinton and then Joe Biden. Although one can make a very good argument that both of those times Bernie, had a good lead and some things happened, and the powers that be decided we don't want Bernie, we want Hillary, we want
Yeah.
good old Joe. So
Yeah,
in
a couple
some
coin
ways,
flips went against him in
yeah.
2016. Yeah, so it says you've got quoted here a Bernie Sanders advisor, Faiz Shakur. I don't know how to pronounce that name, but it looks like he was on a CBS News interview, where he was
Mm.
saying, "quote I assume that he would give it a hard look. I don't want to make the judgment for him. Obviously, it would be his choice to make, but I assume that he would want to reevaluate it." So then he says here in this interview that personally, I take Joe Biden at his word, and our orbit takes him at his word that he's taking it seriously, and presume that he is leaning towards yes. They're talking about Joe Biden running for a second term. And he basically makes the case that if this wasn't the case, and that Biden wasn't going to throw his hat in, for a second term, that Bernie Sanders would be right there seeking that nomination. So I guess my question to you, Chris, my second question maybe is Biden going to run a second term, or is he going to leave the door open for good old Mr. Bernie Sanders here?
Well, that's a very good question. And although Biden has hinted that he is going to run again in 2024, a lot of big name Democrats do not want him to run in 2024. And just this morning, a pretty far left radical group came out with an ad saying, we do not want Biden to run again in 2024. So I would say right now, Biden probably wants to run again, but there's still a long way till 2024. And a lot could happen between now and then. So I wouldn't say it's a guarantee, but I would also say that, it's probably likely that he will.
Yeah, I mean, I know that some of these things have kind of turned around, especially right before the midterms, but it seemed like Biden had a lot of headwinds going against him, whether that's the high inflation that's still lingering around, high gas prices, which again have gone down, but still, like a twice as expensive as it was just a few years ago. A whole host of different controversies that surrounded Joe Biden that would seem to make him not a ideal candidate to run in 2024. But like I said, some of that stuff has reversed course, and he has been trying to promote his track record in the last couple of months as proof that he's being a good president. But do you think that there's a possibility that he will be primaried, even if he does decide to run, that he'll be primaried by somebody like Bernie Sanders?
So this is the big question. And, Joe Biden would like to think that his fortunes have reversed in recent months, but in reality, they haven't. You know why? Because his favorability ratings are at their all-time low. And the exit polls from the 2020 midterms showed that the American people disagree and disfavor Joe Biden. but they just didn't favor the Republicans for a whole bunch of other reasons. So it's not as if, the American people are saying, you know what, actually, Joe Biden's doing a pretty good job. No, they're saying Joe Biden's doing a terrible job. But the other guys, at least in terms of the midterms, we don't really want, but they're selling us either. So I do think that it's very, I'd say it's very likely that Biden could be primaried, maybe Bernie Sanders, maybe AOC, maybe who knows, someone else like comes out of the woodwork. But remember that this also has happened before to a sitting Democratic president, as the article talks about. 1980, Jimmy Carter, kind of the same situation Biden's in. Domestic agenda not going very well. Very high inflation, a lot of energy problems. Foreign policy wise, not going very well. Iranian hostage situation. Cold War wasn't really going our way. We were still having, the fallout from Vietnam. And guess what? President Carter did get primaried. Obviously, he, well, I shouldn't say obviously, but yes, he did win that contest, but he went on to lose in a spectacular fashion in the general election. So I'd say either way, things aren't looking that great for Joe Biden right now in terms of 2024, although
Yeah,
obviously things could change.
yeah. I mean, obviously, we know that Joe Biden is trying to toss some things to his younger supporters in terms of student loan pauses and student loan forgiveness. But you know, Joe Biden has not been one to have a strong showing when it comes to younger Democratic voters. They seem to be mostly behind, whether it's like the squad members or Bernie Sanders, these so-called Democratic socialists and all of that. So it wouldn't surprise me too much if there was a push from some of these, some of these constituencies to see an alternative to Joe Biden. But I think the DNC would probably put the kibosh on that pretty quickly. They have to
Well,
make sure that their candidate, if it is going to be Joe Biden, remains strong and unchallenged. And because you brought up the Carter thing, and Carter running against, who was he running against in that primary?
Ted Kennedy.
Ted Kennedy. And I assume that was before my time, but I assume it was a knockdown, drag out type of a fight throughout the primaries, which I would argue probably hurt him come that general election against Reagan. So I can't imagine that the DNC would allow for like a serious contender to Joe Biden.
Well, especially one like Bernie Sanders, who is a Democratic socialist who wants to implement his socialist agenda. And part of the reason why Bernie lost in 2016 and 2020 is because the overlords of the Democratic Party knew that it would be catastrophic for them. So they said, no, we do not want Bernie to become the candidate. Now, it's very interesting because the base wants Bernie. The base wanted Bernie in 2016. The base wanted Bernie in
oh yeah,
2020.
yeah.
And it's very likely the base is going to want Bernie in 2024, especially like you said, those young voters, the Bernie bros. So Bernie is super popular with them. He's super popular in college campuses. Joe Biden, not so much. But Joe Biden has the big donors and the big wigs of the Democratic Party in his bed. So you're going to have a clash of these two titanic, powers at large here. You're going to have the voters, especially the, young voters who came out in record numbers in 2022 midterms, and the people who actually run the Democratic Party, like you said, the DNC and all those kind of people. It looks like it could be a very big reckoning here.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see. Obviously, it's far too early to really cement any of these things in play. If energy and gas prices start going up again, we get another bout of inflation. I think nothing is off the table in terms of challenging that position of Joe Biden as the candidate for the DNC. So I guess
Well,
we'll see.
and just one more thing, a lot more could happen on the foreign policy front.
Of
China could
course.
invade Taiwan. We could have just a whole host of things. What the situation in Ukraine still very much up in the air. Joe Biden has done a very poor job of maintaining world peace.
Yeah. Also, I mean, we've talked about on this channel before. Joe Biden's mental state is not the sharpest, so that could also be an X factor in all of this too. That could leave the door wide open for a Bernie Sanders type. So Bernie Sanders at the spry young age of 81 right now would be closer to what, 83 come the 2024 election, which if he were to win, that would put him at 87 at the end of his first term. And looking at Bernie Sanders, that's not a young 87. So,
No,
so
but in all fairness, I must say that I think that Bernie Sanders is much more mentally articulate than Joe Biden is.
sure.
Even
Yeah.
though Bernie's actually 1 year older than Joe.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I'm very curious for all those that are tuning into this episode of Stopping Socialism TV. Is Bernie Sanders? Do you think that it's realistic that he will run in 2024? Do you want to see him run? Do you want another taste of that Bernie burn, or are you done with this Democratic Socialist? Let us know in the comments. Chris, you have anything last words to say before we sign off for this segment?
No, I just hope everybody has a great holiday season.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to read this article in length, you can go to stoppingsocialism.com. It'll be, I think, right there on the front page. Chris does a fine job of adding new articles pretty much every day, I believe. And then if you want to see us on social media, we share most of this content across whether it's Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. If you look hard enough, you will find us on Stopping Socialism. Thank everyone for tuning in, and I will talk to you next time.